Hello dear students, welcome to our series on geography. Today let us understand the significance of water cycle and its impact on sustenance of life on earth. Our earth seems to be unique among the other known celestial bodies. The planet Earth is called as blue planet because it has water in it, which covers 3/4 of its surface and constitutes 60 to 70% of the living world. Water regenerates and is redistributed through evaporation, making it seem endlessly renewable. From the time when the earth was formed, water has been important for life. Surprisingly, there is still an adequate supply of water on earth today. This is possible because of the natural recycling of water known as the water cycle. The water cycle replenishes and cleans water that is present on earth through a number of natural processes, and it ensures existence of all living things. Let us try to understand the subject under the following subheadings: types of water, hydrological cycle, importance of hydrological cycle, barriers for hydrological cycle, and significance of water cycle. Coming to types of water. Pure water is tasteless, odorless and colorless. Water can occur in 3 states like solid, liquid or gas. Solid water. Solid water is frozen water in the form of ice. When water freezes, its molecules move farther apart, making ice less dense than water. This means that ice will be lighter than the same volume of water, and therefore ice will float in water. The freezing point of water is 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Liquid water is the form of wet and fluid in nature. This is the form of water with which we are most familiar. We use liquid water in many ways in our daily life. Water as a gas. Water is always present around us in the air in the form of vapor. We cannot see it. When we boil water, the water will change us from a liquid to a gas or water vapor. As some of the water vapor cools, we see it as a small cloud called steam. This cloud of steam is mini version of the clouds we see in the sky. At sea level, steam is formed at 0 degrees Celsius or 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Sometimes the water vapor attaches to small bits of dust in the air. It forms raindrops in the warm temperatures. In cold temperatures, it freezes and forms snow or hail. About 70% of the Earth's surface is covered with water. 97% of the water on the Earth is salt water. Sea water is the mixture of salt and other minerals which makes water unfit for drinking purpose. Though the salt can be removed, it is a very difficult and expensive process. Another 2% of the water on earth is in the form of ice at the glaciers of north and south poles. This glacier ice is fresh water and it could be melted. However, it is too far away from the where people like to be usable. More important point is that less than 1% of all the water on earth is fresh water that is actually available for us to use. We use this small amount of water for drinking, transportation, heating and cooling industry and many other purposes. Therefore, water is more important than food for humans because dehydration, that is lack of water, will kill us faster than the starvation, that is lack of food. On the other hand, since the plants and animals we eat also depend on water, so lack of water likely to cause both dehydration and starvation. Clean, safe drinking water is scarce. The scenario gets worse. Water that look drinkable can contain harmful elements which could cause illness and death if ingested. Today, nearly 1 billion people in the developing world don't have proper access to water. However, we take it for granted, we waste it, and we even pay too much to drink it from a little plastic bottles. Coming to hydrological cycle. The hydrological cycle is the process powered by the sun's energy which moves water between the oceans and the sky and the land. The water cycle is extremely important process because it ensures the availability of water for all living organisms and regulates weather patterns on our planet. The hydrological cycle begins with the evaporation of water from the surface of the ocean. As moist air is lifted, it cools and water vapor condenses to form clouds. Moisture is transported around the globe until it returns to the surface as precipitation. Once the water reaches the ground, one of the two processes may occur. Some of the water may evaporate back into the atmosphere, or the water may penetrate the surface and become groundwater. Groundwater either seeps its way into the oceans, rivers and streams, or is released back into the atmosphere through transpiration. The balance of water that remains on the surface of earth is runoff, which empties into lakes, rivers and streams and is carried back to the oceans where the cycle begins again. The water cycle consists of 6 important processes. First one is the evaporation. Water is transferred from the surface to the atmosphere through evaporation, the process by which water changes from a liquid to a gas. Evaporation in the atmosphere is a crucial step in the water cycle. Water on Earth's surface will evaporate into the atmosphere as energy is absorbed by the liquid water. Water molecules that exist in the liquid phase are free flowing and in no particular fixed position. Once energy is added to water by heat from the sun, the bonds between the water molecules gain kinetic energy or energy in motion. Once the gas called water vapor or humidity reaches the atmosphere, various types of clouds can form. Next is the condensation. Condensation process is the opposite of evaporation, in which water leaves the vapor state and returns to the liquid state. Condensation requires low temperature. Water droplets formed from condensation that are small remain suspended in the atmosphere in the form of clouds in the sky or fog at the ground level. Dust particles need to be present around which the droplet can form. Next is the precipitation. Under the correct temperature and atmospheric pressure, the small water droplets in clouds become larger and precipitation occurs. This can be in the form of rain, hail, sleet or snow. Fourth one is the surface runoff. As water returns to the earth by the process of precipitation, It moves over the land and flows downhill by gravity into streams, rivers, ponds and lakes. This step is important because the water returns to the ocean as surface runoff, where it once again is evaporated to start a cycle. Next is the infiltration. When precipitation occurs, not all the water returns to the ocean as surface runoff. Some of it also soaks into the ground. As water filters through the soil and rock layers, it becomes cleaner, that is, impurities are filtered out. Some of this water returns to the surface or is used up by plants. Some of this water becomes groundwater. Transpiration. The water absorbed by the plants from the soil moves from the roots up to the stem and to the leaves. From the leaves, water evaporates again into the atmosphere. This process is called as transpiration. Coming to importance of hydrological cycle. Water cycle is very important as it's how the earth's water recycles itself. If there is no water cycle, water would evaporate, but then none would form clouds, none would fall as precipitation, none would fill up the lake, streams, etc. Eventually, it would all evaporate and we would run out of water. It is also important as it provides water to the plants and animals also. Water cycle moves nutrients and sediments in the different aquatic ecosystems linked to the climate as it involves atmosphere, oceans and land. Water cycle is an important material cycle. Water is one of the important substances necessary for life. On average, water constitutes 70% of the body weight of an organism. It is an important ecological factor that determines the structure and function of the ecosystem. Cycling of all other elements is also dependent upon water as it provides the transportation to different compartments and is also a solvent medium for their uptake by organisms. It is needed along with carbon dioxide in photosynthesis and has moderating effect on the temperature of the surrounding areas by virtue of its heat absorbing ability. Protoplasm, the physical basis of life, is made up of 85 to 90% of water. Human blood too contains 90% of water. However, significant amounts of water are incorporated by the ecosystem in protoplasm synthesis, and in a substantial return to the atmosphere occurs by way of transpiration from living plants and evaporation from animals. Water is required for solubilization of chemicals and several biochemical reactions like hydrolytic digestion of polymeric nutrients, photosynthesis, etc. It is also important for the working of macromolecules as a good ionizer and transport of materials. Water acts as a habitat for hydrophytic and aquatic animals and as an agent of geological change. Water is the agent of energy transfer and use. Water is a tremendous factor in neutralizing heat radiations of sunlight, so also acts as a temperature buffer. There are two overlapping water cycles operating in nature. They are global water cycle and biological water cycle. Global water cycle does not involve life. Water evaporates from water bodies like seas and oceans, lakes and rivers. Condensation of vapor leads to precipitation in the form of rain, snow or hailstorm, which fall on the soil. Most of the rainwater percolates into the soil and become a part of water table and seep into the ocean. Surface rainwater and water formed by melting of ice and snow flow into the rivers, streams and finally joins the sea. A large amount of water remains underground as well as in the form of perennial snow in the polar regions and mountain peaks above the snow line. Global water cycle is in steady state as total precipitation is balanced by total evaporation. On the other hand, biological water cycle involves the entry of water into living beings and then returns to the physical environment. Underground water acts as a starting point. From there, terrestrial plants absorb water from the soil through their roots. Terrestrial animals obtain water from the plants they consume or directly from different water bodies. Aquatic organisms get water from their surroundings. For biological water cycle, water is produced through several ways, that is, through animals, where animals release water into the atmosphere by respiration in the form of vapors, or to soils as a fluid excretion. Water returns to the environment after the death and decay of organisms, that is plants and animals. A large part of water is given back to nature by plants as they lose most of the absorbed water by the process of transpiration. Water vapors thus formed results in the formation of clouds followed by rain and so enters the global water cycle. Thus, there is always the exchange of water between the global water cycle and biological water cycle. Next, let us know what are the roles played by sun and plants in hydrological cycle. The role of sun is to evaporate the water and make it into the water vapor, so clouds could absorb it and later it becomes precipitation. The sun is the most important part of the water cycle. Plants absorb water through their roots and transport it to the leaves. Here, it undergoes transpiration and is returned to the atmosphere as water vapor. Some of the water is also retained within the plant. Coming to barriers for hydrological cycle. One of the ways that water moves through the cycle is through its ability to permeate or soak into the soil. There are four key areas that impact that part of the cycle. Changes in the ability of soil to soak up water through increases of impervious surfaces like roads and buildings and removal of forest cover. Water withdrawals or impoundments such as through well or dams, filling depression wetlands and altering stream flows and beds. It is also important to note that even increase in the rate of hydrological cycle also affects a balance in the environment. Increasing atmospheric concentrations of greenhouse gases, mainly carbon dioxide, have led to a warming at the surface by nearly 0.6 degrees centigrade during the 20th century, and it is widely believed that this trend will continue, leading to a higher sea surface temperature among other factors. One intuitive consequence of a warmer ocean surface is a larger vapor pressure difference between the sea surface and the adjacent atmosphere. This would enhance the evaporation rate and hence increase the other components of the hydrological cycle. Numerous experimental observations and models of the global climate confirm the hypothesis that global warming enhances the global hydrological cycle. For instance, A global warming by 4 degrees centigrade is expected to increase global precipitation by about 10%. Models suggest that the increase is more likely to come as heavier rainfall rather than as more frequent rainfalls or falls of longer duration. Intense drought, changes in the rain events such as monsoon rains can have either beneficial or detrimental effects. Namely, decreased rainfall can cause water shortages and increased rainfall can aggravate flooding. An enhancing hydrological cycle in return may enhance global warming through several mechanisms. One mechanism is the water vapor feedback, because water vapor is a key greenhouse gas. Also, increased cloudiness heats the planet, at least if the clouds are high or deep, as is the case for the most storms. This is because high or deep clouds reduce the outgoing long wave radiation more than the net incoming short wave radiation. Now let me tell you about the significance of water cycle. The earth's supply of water is stable and water is used over and over again. About 1/3 of all solar energy is dissipated in driving the water cycle. Sunshine evaporates water from the oceans, lakes and streams, and from the moist soil surfaces and from bodies of living organisms. Water vapor gathers in the form of clouds, which move with the winds over the earth's surface. After cooling and condensation, water falls in the form of rains or snow. This constant movement of water from the earth into the atmosphere and back is known as the water cycle. Some of the water which falls on the land percolates through the soil until it reaches the zone of saturation. Below the zone of saturation is a solid rock through which water cannot percolate. The upper surface of this zone of saturation is known as the water table. The extra water runs off in the form of streams which converge and joins to form rivers. Finally, water is returned to the ocean. All the processes of the water cycle play an important role in the replenishing and distribution of water supply on earth, and the natural recycling of water will not be possible without any of them. There are other processes that also contribute to the water cycle, including sublimation and transpiration, but the above mentioned processes are the main components of the cycle. Actually, only 1% of the world's water is usable to us. About 97% is salty sea water and 2% is frozen in glaciers and polar ice caps. Thus, that 1% of world's water supply is a precious commodity necessary for our survival. The hydrological cycle is important because it is how water reaches plants, animals and us. Besides providing people, animals and plants with water, it also moves things like nutrients, pathogens and sediments in and out of the aquatic ecosystem. So, we can summarize like this: water covers about 75% of the earth's surface, occurring in lakes, rivers, seas and oceans. The oceans alone contain 97% of all water on earth. Much of the remainder is frozen in the polar ice and glaciers. Less than 1% water is present in the form of ice-free fresh water like rivers, lakes and aquifers. Yet, this relatively negligible portion of the planet's water is crucially important to all forms of terrestrial and aquatic life. There is also underground supply of water. Soils near the surface also serves as reservoir for enormous quantities of water. Water is the foundation of life, and still today all around the world far too many people spend their entire day searching for it. It is clear, as already mentioned, water is the elixir of life. A lot to be done in order to sustain the water level in the planet Earth. I am signing up with this. We will meet in the next episode. Until then, take care of yourself and also our water resources. Thank you.